Moments ago, Nissan has filed a criminal complaint against Carlos Ghosn on the basis of his misuse of a significant amount of the company's funds. That's coming in just after news that prosecutors had filed 2 more charges. Well, for more, let's speak to investigative reporter Jake Adelstein. He's covered the shadier sides of Japan for years, and he can help us demystify this court process in Tokyo. Jake Adelstein joining us from Singapore. Thank you very much for speaking to France 24 today. I want to begin by asking you, you've been quite critical of the Japanese prosecution's handling of this case. Tell us why.
Well, I'm critical of this case because they're doing what they always do, is when they arrest someone, they hold them and they keep rearresting them until they confess. And that is why Japan has this word called enzai, which refers to false confessions. If you hold anyone for 23 days and you offer to maybe let them out and see the world again by confessing to the crimes that they're accused of, it's possible that you can get a confession. And this is what they're doing to Carlos Ghosn. This isn't the first time that they have taken a CEO and subjected them to this kind of brutal treatment, hoping to break them down. The last victim of this was Mark Karplus, a Frenchman who was the chairman of Mt. Gox, a company which collapsed with 650,000 bitcoins worth about $400 million at the time in 2014.
And is this process an aspect of them having a lack of evidence, holding them for a limited amount of time, or is it more about Japanese authorities trying to tackle white-collar crime?
No, it is about Japanese authorities trying to win. This is how the prosecutors win. Once they've gone and made the arrest, and once they've indicted someone, the loss of face would be so severe if they don't make the case that there's no way they'll pull back now. I'll refer you to the Karplus case because the reason I'm so critical is I've seen this happen before. Karplus was arrested for crimes related to 650,000 bitcoins being stolen. They arrested him on minor charges, just like they arrested Ghosn. He did confess. They rearrested him. They held him in captivity for 8 months. And while he was in captivity, the U.S. government began an investigation, and they actually caught the person who had hacked the Bitcoin exchange, who is going to be extradited to France this year. So even though he's innocent of the charges that the investigation began, once they decided to arrest him and get a conviction, there was no way they were going to let him go. And he's still on trial 3 years later.
And in that case like this one, the person of interest is a foreigner. Is that a hindrance, or is that something that could help them?
It's a total hindrance, because what they do with foreigners, and what they also did with Karplus, who I spoke to 2 days ago, is they come to you with a statement written out in Japanese. And sometimes the statement is written out in Japanese before you've actually said anything. And then they ask you to sign the statement while someone interprets it on the spot. Now, supposedly they videotape this process, but no Japanese judge actually ever reviews the videotape. So if you sign this confession written out in Japanese, which almost always says that you had criminal intent and you knew what you were doing, then you are definitely going to be found guilty. And because Ghosn won't sign a statement written in Japanese, they will keep arresting him and keep detaining him as long as they possibly can, in the hopes that he will make their job easy. And keep in mind that the whole system is designed to favor the prosecutors. 50% of cases in Japan are not prosecuted, which is why the conviction rate is so high. Prosecutors won't take a case that isn't a slam dunk. But once you're indicted, you have a 1% chance of being found innocent. And even if you're found innocent, the prosecution can appeal the case twice. In which case you're usually found guilty anyway. So the odds of Ghosn winning a not guilty verdict are extremely low.
The odds are extremely low. What does that leave his defense? What's the strategy here for him moving forward?
Well, the most brilliant thing that his defense did is that Otsuru-san, who is a former prosecutor himself, has basically avoided criticizing the Japanese justice system, what is sometimes called a hostage justice system, words he himself used, because you're kept hostage by the state until your trial begins, in which time they can interrogate you up to 6 or 7 hours a day. His strategy has been basically to say, one, is he's given Ghosn a chance to appear in court and give his side of the story in a way that was very sympathetic to the Japanese people. It certainly changed the tone of how the Japanese press is reporting the story. And his other strategy is that he refuted all the charges. He handed the materials to the Japanese press and the foreign press, and he basically has a strategy that will allow the prosecutors, who used to be his disciples, his children, so to speak, because he's from the same department, to save face. And what he said yesterday, or the day before in his press conference, was actually, it looks like Nissan wanted to get rid of Ghosn, and they went to the prosecutors with evidence, but they didn't give the prosecutors all the evidence, and the prosecutors didn't do a good job of reviewing the evidence, and now we're all in this big mess. Let's put it behind us. And that's the smartest thing he could do. He's not going to criticize the Japanese legal system. He's not going to criticize the prosecutors, but he can imply that Nissan has misled them.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Adelstein, Jake Adelstein from Singapore.